go live.
Oh, so just you personally don't walk.
Yeah, no, apparently I have something down on my computer, so I'm just going to let it hang out here.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, well, 10:30, we'll get started. I've decided to make the executive decision that we are not going to have a Lady Gaga sing-along in this session, so feeling pretty bad. You know, I was giving Tom a solo too, but you know. Okay, anywho, welcome to the session. We're talking about, you know, the title, online classes in law school, sort of soup to nuts. Brought together kind of a panel here of people that are experienced in teaching, supporting online classes, and this is hopefully something whether you're interested in teaching, you're interested in, you know, your school wants to start having online classes, you're in an IT position where you might have to start supporting or you're currently supporting. Hopefully there will be something here that will be of benefit to all of you. Really, as far as the topics, you know, we're going to kind of try to cover sort of both, you know, proposing online courses, getting approval, technology for teaching online, creating or adapting an online class, managing an online classroom, preparing faculty to teach, and understanding the students that take these classes and supporting their needs and their technology issues. And how it's going to kind of go, I'm going to go through these different topics. I'm going to have, you know, kind of prompting questions from me, but if you have comments or you have questions that you want to throw in and ask the panelists, please feel free to do so. This isn't an overly, you know, rigid or structured format. So if there's stuff that you want to know, please ask. Shoot your hand up and I'll try to help facilitate things. As far as introductions, my name is Elizabeth Farrell. I'm the Research and Instructional Technology Librarian at Florida State College of Law in Tallahassee. And let everyone introduce themselves.
I'm Susie Stringer. I am the Director of Academic Technology at Florida Coastal School of Law in Jacksonville, Florida.
My name is Zhou. I'm the Assistant Director of Library and Educational Technology at William Mitchell College of Law in St. Paul, Minnesota.
My name is Lindsay Matts, and I'm the Educational Technologist at William Mitchell College of Law in St. Paul, Minnesota.
And my name is Tom Boone, and I'm Reference Librarian at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles.
So just diving right in, sort of proposing online classes, getting approval for them. Let's just kick it off there. You know, John, you had something to say about that.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions to start with, or just to start with? I can just talk about the process that I get my class approved. I taught an online real-time class, online class last semester. And the way that I propose it, because we have a faculty member at the law school who wants the class to be taught, tax law research. We haven't taught the class for at least 10 years, maybe longer. Yeah, and the faculty member wanted that class to be taught, and we don't have anybody who wants to teach that class. Yeah, nobody wants to touch that topic. I had the advantage because I was a member of the curriculum committee for about a year and a half. So I know how the process worked. Looked at a lot of course proposal over a year and a half, so I know how it worked. And at our law school, the process, we actually have a very good process where you can propose a class and the curriculum committee can approve it. With no faculty approval. Curriculum committee can approve it on a temporary basis, so you can offer it twice. So as long as the curriculum committee think the course is fine, you're good to go. And you can offer it for 2 semesters before you can finalize it, before the faculty will vote on it, will become part of the curriculum. So the process is actually, from my perspective, it's straightforward. But what helped me was that I worked with the faculty member in the process of designing for the class. You know, what's the goal, what's the rationale, what kind of resources I want to use, what the topic I want to cover. I put them all in a package, and I work back and forth with the professor who wanted the class to be taught. And so once that's get done, so the approval process is just a kind of like, feel like a rubber stamp. You know, there's nothing. But the real work was done in the process of you getting it to the point that the professor who wanted the course to be done to say, well, that's fine. But of course, you can't listen to everything the professor said. The professor, in my case, the professor wanted a 2-credit class, which I think it would be too much time. I would spend too much time on the covering. Plus, I proposed it as an online class, real-time class. So it's a distance education class credit. It's new in the law school. It's a brand new. And because of my background, I can basically set it up technologically. I mean, I can use any kind of technology that I can use. It's so easy for me to integrate the design of the class using the online component, the virtual online classroom, and all the supporting technology behind it. Course management system, the blogging platform, and anything. So put together in a package. But as I look back, if you are in the process of considering proposing a new class like that, you got to have, my experiences, you want to find some professor who will stand behind you to say, well, look, this is a class I want. And if you work through that process, it will be much easier for you to get the course approved. And also, if your curriculum committee worked the same way as the one that we have, it's relatively easier for you to get your course approved on a temporary basis. And that's where my class is.
Is there any other?
Just to add on to what he said, is that when I wasn't directly involved in getting the course that I taught, which was an advanced legal research class at UNLV, I wasn't involved in the proposal and the acceptance process. I was just the one who was tagged on to teach once it was approved. But I do know that a member of our faculty who had already taught an online course at UNLV, who had taught the first course there, she got behind us and was very much involved in the process, and having her behind us made it a lot easier to get the second course approved.
Yeah, you just have to find a professor who is interested in it to work together. To make it much easier.
Well, sort of moving on then to something that you've already touched on, Don, is sort of the technology. And I know that's something probably one of the biggest things that, obviously, because we're here at CALI, that we need to talk about as far as the technology for teaching online. What are your options for class management systems or learning management systems? What's out there? I mean, we all heard Twin, Blackboard, but what are the platforms that you've used or you don't like to use, or I'm going to throw that out there. Who wants to?
Yeah, I can take that. One of the first things, we did a lot of online learning this year. So one of the projects that I worked on was creating a trial advocacy skills course, partnering with Mino, the National Institute of Trial Advocacy. And so they wanted real time, they wanted other bits and pieces of technology, and so they wanted the online course and then a non-quite online, or not quite synchronous part, so there was asynchronous and synchronous components. So the first thing we did, and that I'm a firm believer in, is doing a needs assessment of figuring out all of the different pieces you need and then playing with stuff until you find the one that works the best. And so we knew we needed a home base for the course, and so we looked at Moodle, we looked at Blackboard, but since we were on our Blackboard, it's web courses through LexisNexis, Twin, and then using Google Sites. And so we wanted a home base, but since we were going to have attorneys and law students, we didn't want to use Twin or Blackboard because it was just too much with the whole finding usernames and all of that kind of stuff. So we ended up going with Google Sites as a home base. And then we could put up Google Docs or link to Google Docs and have everything there. And since pretty much anybody is capable of creating a Google account, though some people had to be walked through it a little bit more than others, we decided to go with that instead. So we needed the course home base, so we needed a synchronous component. So we looked at what all did we look at? We looked at, I looked at Illuminate, I looked at Adobe Connect. What's the other one? Dim. Some were free, some were not free. And my favorite is Adobe Connect because that's what I used in grad school. And it's user-friendly and it's pretty. And it gave us what we needed. We came up with, we needed to have webcams or to be able to see everybody in the course. We needed to be able to close down some people's webcams so we could have 2 people using partner cross or direct examination at one time. We needed to have chat, we needed it to be able to do PowerPoints, we needed to be able to share desktops. So we had come up with kind of a checklist of does the system need, or what do we need in our system. And then we needed a piece for posting videos online. So students would videotape themselves, doing an opening statement, a closing statement, a direct exam, and then we needed a place to post that online. And we actually ended up going with YouTube because instead of using Adobe Connect for that feature, just because of the administration issues. And YouTube, you use your Google account, and so everything was kind of combined into one, so they didn't have all of these extra passwords and everything. So students would use YouTube they'd either record it through YouTube or they'd upload it through that. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know if I have questions.
Yeah, go, yeah,
But
please.
to your last point, maybe you were about to address it, so I apologize. But it seems to me, how did you address the dual challenges of privacy and video length on YouTube?
We told people about, the video length was the harder part because, as we all know, lawyers and law students like to hear themselves talk. So they actually kind of got points taken off if it was longer than the 10-minute limit on YouTube. That they were told they had to do it in that amount of time, and if they weren't able to be that terse in that amount of time, they weren't doing the assignment correctly. Privacy, there are privacy settings on YouTube where your videos can be private. You can only let certain people log in. Otherwise, I'd show you some examples today, but so students would have privacy things. They'd send it out to the person that was supposed to critique them, and so only they would be sharing this link. That it wasn't, everybody else in the class couldn't see it. I mean, they could choose. And we had some people who really wanted to have everybody else be able to see what they were doing. And then we had one guy in JAG who had to do a couple things in his uniform and didn't want that online. And if for some reason something wasn't working, we just had them upload the video to the Google site and not have it go through YouTube at all. So, yeah.
Do you want to talk about that little recording we actually experimented?
Oh, the other little recorder we actually experimented with. One thing we also looked at instead of YouTube was using a flip Mino and giving everybody in the class a little flip Mino video recorder. It does. And like, this is what it looks like. No, it was a really small USB recorder. Really cute, but not practical because expensive. I mean, they're like $200 or $300. And people lose things and break things, and it just wasn't a practical option. But we gave people, one of the nice things is you give people options in technology to complete the task, and that you've already tried out the technology to know that it will complete the task. And you say, here are 3 ways you can do this, pick the easiest for you. And as long as they're completing that, that's saying you have to use this type, you have to use this, you have to use this, just didn't work because there's so many different bits to technology that, we found out Picasa doesn't record on a Mac, it doesn't record video on a Mac, but it does on PCs. So we had to find a difference. Students with Macs had to use iMovie to record their video to upload to YouTube instead, and it was just super fun. But yeah.
Well, it sounds like, oh, yeah.
As a faculty member, it might be helpful for me if the presenters could just briefly describe what their class was in the sense of, I taught a class on advanced legal research. I had 15 students. It was taught in an asynchronous or synchronous capacity, just some basic background about the courses. And maybe for other folks, I don't know if that'd be helpful, but as we're talking about the technology and the process, it would help me to know a bit more about the actual course that you're teaching and how it was taught.
I'll speak up. We have a number of courses that we do, distance learning. We do 4 or 5 courses every semester. We also have some programs that we do. We have one program that we have two programs that we do completely online. We don't do required courses online, but other courses can be taught online. Most of the courses are elective courses that we do today. In the fall and spring, a lot of the professors use both a synchronous and an asynchronous method, meaning synchronous being live, so we use a virtual classroom. Asynchronous is the students can come in and do the coursework at any time. We found this summer that the majority of the classes are totally asynchronous. There's a live, somewhat live, component in that the professors still use Illuminate Live to record a session for the students, but the students can go in and listen to it at any time they want to. So the class itself is totally asynchronous. When we looked at technology, we had to think about four things. We had to think about the platform itself, what we were going to use. We had to think about the methods for recording or for doing the live component. We also had to think about how we were going to do course evaluations and how we were going to do exams. Because we have, one of the beauties of distance learning is students who are doing externships in other places can take advantage of this. And we had students at The Hague, we had students in New York, we had students in different places, and we needed to be able to meet the needs of all of those students. And it's been quite a learning process for us. After spending $500 to send exams to The Hague last semester, we decided there must be a better way to do that. So as we thought about the technology, we had the same situation with Lexis and Twin, and alumni don't even have access to those anymore. So one of the first things we did was begin looking for a new learning management system that we could use as we grow and as we move into different areas. We love Lexis Blackboard, Lexis Web Courses, because we can track, and we need to be able to provide certain reports to ABA. So that is perfect for that. But what we did is we just had a group, we met with faculty and staff and came up with our needs list, and then found a learning management system that can meet the majority of the needs on that list for us. So that houses our program. And then we also had to think about faculty capabilities. We're building faculty competencies in distance learning. We're doing that for a number of reasons. Our expectation is that one day ABA will be more accepting of distance learning, but we also want to be prepared for emergencies. We had professors who were out sick, and we still wanted to be able to hold those classes. So we use Illuminate Live generally because it's easy to set up, it's easy, a professor can learn it in about 10 minutes and hold a class. We also have faculty members who may not use PowerPoint, and Illuminate Live wasn't the right media if they just are trying to record something. So we use just regular digital recorders that have a USB. We can plug them in and we can load the recording into the learning management system. Course evaluations are pretty important to us because we want a pretty high, and we have a pretty high participation rate for students. We had to think about how are we going to get that participation rate in an online course. So that one has still been a task. We do our course evaluations electronically anyway using a Scantron product, Class Climate, but we still have to send out those reminders. We haven't come up with a method yet, and I don't know if anybody else has, and how to get those and ensure that we have the high rating. And we're going to use, well, the learning management systems have the capability to do quizzing and exams in there, but we still want that secure feature. So we've been using ExamSoft as our method for doing the exams. And we're not requiring that the students necessarily, if they're somewhere else, they don't necessarily have to come back to the school to do their exams.
What do you guys do at William?
Well, I want to just answer that
Classes.
question. The course management system, when you hear the distance education, most people talk about two different modes, right? Asynchronous and asynchronous. And for asynchronous mode, most of them use a course management system like Blackboard or any other course management like Mino. The majority of the activity is conducted within that system. The discussion is asynchronous, is offline, anytime you jump in, you come out, and assessment, everything is done in that component. So that technology is already here. Any course management system can handle that. Now, the other piece is, Susan is talking about, like you need to record something, you need to conduct some interactive activities, quiz, or polls, or those are outside, but inside the system, you have that functionality too. So.
And some programs can be integrated with the system, such as SoftChalk is an interactive program for students to do different things, and that can actually integrate with the learning management system.
And I'm just getting back to the question, what you mentioned, you have all kinds of courses, but will you mention what kind of course, you mentioned you have CALI as well that you do?
Right.
And
We use Adobe Connect, the professional edition. Adobe Connect, which is, you can do it real time, you can see everybody, you can hear everybody. The maximum, the videos that are holding 12 people, you can display 12 people all at the same time with videos, if they have videos. I have 12 students registered, but Offspring only have 6 students, so it's a small class. For me, it's beautiful. It's an online environment. You can hear everybody, you can see everybody. It's just like you're meeting everybody here, except you have this one step removed. And everybody see you, they have their laptop, they can see you talking, they can maximize your videos, they can take over the whole screen. You can talk, they can ask questions. There's also little icons. You can have the system prompt you. If somebody asks you a question, the system will prompt you if somebody asks a question. So you take over. You can share your desktop. You can, for my class, research class, I need to show the students how to use, give you a fact problem. Okay, what resources to look for. You know, if somebody, sometimes I did it on purpose. I said, can you find it in a text cord? I gave them a question. You can't find it. Somebody say, well, how to do this? Or show me how do you get there? So they will guide, will see to the side and go there. And so you just like you're physically there teaching the students. We can, and I set it for a Friday. My time slot when I first taught it, set it to 5:30 to 6:30 on Friday, thinking the traffic wouldn't be that. You know, a lot of people wouldn't be online at that time. So when I never have any technical glitches. It just goes like that. And students coming from everywhere. They can come from cafe, their workplace, their home, and I had students coming from right after the doctor's appointment, went to a nearby cafe. I took the class. So it's just very convenient for the students.
And that was our biggest thing too, was the convenience issue. We have a part-time program and a full-time program. And so when we started talking about doing online learning and everything, it was really for the students that to start really doing things for the students that couldn't quite get to campus, or you know, they could come one less day a week or something, just to make things a lot more accessible. And asynchronous courses are a lot easier with that than synchronous courses. So, you know, you do the step-by-step, I think Susie was talking about, where you know, you have your lesson 1 up and it's all these things you need to read and complete and do this and interact. And then the next week you have lesson 2 and you have to do this and you have record lectures or video, or you have to do this. That is, you're completing it on your own. You're still guided by a professor, but you're not required to be in a classroom or in front of a screen at a certain point in time.
I think we had a question right there.
Susie, you said that you guys have 2 programs that are completely online.
Yes.
How long have you been, you and William, how long have you had your online courses, and what problems did you that happened maybe when you were first starting out that you have now overcome that goes to anybody?
One of the courses, one of the programs that we have online, we've done for 4 years now. It is, it's a conditional program. The first couple of years, we partnered with another law school, so we didn't actually administer the program. Last year, we still partnered with them, but we did a lot of our own things. We wanted to manage our own exams. We did not like the systems they were using. So this year, we did it all on our own. We used our own systems. But when you're partnering with anybody, there are constraints, regardless whether it's technical constraints or whether there are other constraints. So we've been able to kind of balance that a little bit. I think we really haven't had a lot of problems, but the biggest hurdle we had to jump was getting a new learning management system. That is not something that you can just go out and say, oh, gee, I like this one or I like that one. I love Blackboard, or I loved it before they went to 9. I love Blackboard, but it's a very expensive product. It didn't make sense for us to choose that as our learning management system when it's outside of Lexis. So we really had to think about what resources we had, what financial resources we had, and what our needs were in order to move forward with that. So a lot of the things that we have that we're using, we had in place. We've used Illuminate Live for 3 years now, and faculty were using it with their face-to-face courses as a supplement. They were using Twin or Lexis as a supplement to their face-to-face courses. So maybe another thing that we really had to think about had nothing to do with technology itself. Technology is just a tool, but the way the faculty teach the classes, you can't just take a face-to-face course and everything you're doing in that face-to-face course and say, I'm going to do this online. There has to be some planning with that. So.
Huge plan.
Oh, yeah.
I think there was a question here.
Yeah, my question was, do you have formal class size limitations with your distance courses?
No. Best practices are that your distance courses are smaller than what you have. You never have a class this size in a distance class. That would be insane for the professor. Honestly, completely, utterly, totally insane. That it's just too hard to manage. That I like 12. I think 12 is an excellent number. It just works for, especially if it's discussion heavy and everything, then you can still interact and still manageable for the faculty, because the faculty are, if you have somebody on board and excited, they're still going to stumble and they're still going to have a lot of issues kind of changing the way they teach. And Susie just mentioned that you can't just take a course that you've been teaching for 20 years and be like, oh, I'm just going to put it online this year. It's going to be fun. It's really taking it and thinking about it in a way to say, okay, what's really important and how are we going to do this? And divide it up. It's not just reading from the casebook and discussing cases. It's, coming up with, here are the different topics we're going to cover. If we get through this topic this week, that's good. You guys can start on the next topic and really thinking about it. So
I'm going to jump to right there.
Do you offer your faculty members options of course management systems for a particular, if they want to do a distance ed or this kind of situation, if you have a professor who really likes Boone, for example, as opposed to maybe doesn't want to use Blackboard or doesn't want to use Adobe Connect?
No.
Do you work with them, or you say this is the model that we've adopted and we find it works best?
I told my faculty that if they want to do a distance course, they need to do it on Lexis web courses. That if they want the high level of support from me, they're going to do it on our preferred course management system.
Now, as a
Yeah, I want to let Tom.
so as a counter to that, as someone who was teaching a course and wanted to have complete control over the teaching environment and didn't need IT support, I refuse to use Twin or Blackboard. I can't stand either one of them. I don't want to be anywhere near them. And so I actually built my own site using Drupal. That's not something that a faculty member can necessarily come in and do. It's not something that necessarily an IT department is going to support, unfortunately. And so, but if someone is motivated enough to to not necessarily need the support, there are options out there. I mean, what Drupal is, if you don't know it, it is a content management system. It's not meant for any specific type of web content. It can be programmed and bent to do whatever you want. And I've built numerous websites doing all sorts of different things using Drupal. And so I used it to build basically a course management system. And so I was able to make it look and feel exactly how I wanted it to look and feel. display things in the order that I wanted it to display, as opposed to even something like Moodle, which is an open source course management system. It still is very locked in out of the box of how it displays content, how it provides the user experience. And by building my own system using Drupal rather than course management, I built something completely from scratch that did exactly what I wanted, and I felt it made it more intuitive for the students, and I could build something that was very specific for what I was teaching, which was advanced legal research. It was completely asynchronous, and so basically each week I needed all of the material for the course, the lectures, which were MP3 files, the PowerPoint slides, the assignments, the discussion questions could all be laid out there in one place at the top of the front page, and when week 2 rolled around, based upon the date that I had set up, then that got slid down, week 2 appeared at the top with all of that same content with links to everything specifically. But again, that's not something that the IT staff is necessarily going to support. I was completely on my own, and I was hosting that site on my desktop computer. I happen to have a pretty powerful Mac on my desktop, and it was actually hosting the site on my desktop computer.
But if you're in an environment where, like, you're very capable and have all that ability and wherewithal to do that, but if you're in an environment where you're looking at multiple faculty who all have different needs and wants and likes, do you all pretty much have a standard that you encourage?
We do. We use Lexis primarily today because of tracking capabilities. Like Twin has tracking capabilities, but they're not quite as robust as what Lexis has. Once we go to the new system, then that's where we want to put our new distance courses are all in the new system, because tracking was it was the number one feature that we wanted to make sure we had ability to do. We think reporting is going to be very important, especially if we want ABA to approve more distance education. Then we need to be able to show them that we're meeting the quality standards that they expect. We do have 2 professors this summer who are using Twin for their distance courses, but we're working very, very closely with them so that we can monitor the student participation in the courses, just simply because we want to make sure we're able to report something later.
Yeah. And before we jump to the next question, if any of you are also interested in the kind of roll your own approach, I want to sort of plug one of Tom's earlier projects. If you're a member of AALL and the CSSIS, their Web 2.0 challenge a year ago, that was built by Tom on Drupal, and it's still available online.
It's still available. It's either W2C 2009.css.
If you Google maybe Web 2.0 challenge CSSIS, but that's an example. If you're interested in the build your own approach, that's something that you can take a look at. It's very cool to use too as a participant in that. There was a question in the back.
Yeah, actually, kind of your comments just now kind of segued into my question. I was wondering if any of you all have any experience with this sort of thing, Twin specifically, and if you could maybe talk about your experiences with that.
I'm not a fan of Twin. Being in St. Paul, Minnesota, you would think I would be because of Thomson Reuters being right nearby. Both systems are good, but it's really, you can pull a lot more data out of Blackboard than you can with Twin. I'm trying to be really diplomatic. There's features that Twin have that I think are really good, that if you're doing stuff in a classroom, like with your live class, it has a polling feature, it has some bits of a friendlier interface. But it's not one of those that, because it's a homegrown system, it's not a standard system, there's not as much, it's not as comfortable that students haven't used it until they get to law school because it's law school specific. And that's one thing that I always go for, is something that at least the students are slightly familiar with too, that it's not just what the faculty are familiar with.
Well, and Blackboard was something that existed before Lexis came on board, and so it was already being used as course management for all sorts of things, whereas Twin was something developed specifically by West. as part of, legal education, so it isn't necessarily as robust.
And I have a question I want to throw to the panel, but I'm not interrupting your questions, but, we're talking a lot about technology and, all the different things that you use. I'm curious, at your different schools, do you have sort of minimum technology requirements for the students? Because, one of the attractions is, hey, we can get that student that's studying at The Hague this summer. Do you have technology requirements as far as what's on their computers or connection speeds, or what, just kind of surveying what do you have at your schools that you require? What's essential, bare minimum?
We have a list that we post for the students in our student orientation. We tell them at the very beginning what they have to have. If they're taking a distance course, then technology is not an excuse for being absent. So we don't let them say, oh gee, my computer crashed, or I couldn't get on the internet, or so we don't tell them specifically what they have to have. They have to have the capability to access the internet. If they're taking a course that contains the Illuminate Live component, then they have to have a microphone. They do not have to have a webcam. Those of you who use Illuminate Live realize that the maximum number of cameras is 6. So, and our courses are bigger than that, so we don't require the webcam. But they've got to have the microphone. They have to have access to the internet. Then we put the plugins for Flash. We'll put the compatibility link for PowerPoint for 7, for 2007. But most of the things they do need, we'll put in there. And some are course specific. Some professors, their videos are in Flash, so we want to make sure the students can do that.
What about you?
Yeah, we don't have requirements, but one of the things we did that's before we started, at least the trial advocacy program that I worked on, was saying, here's what we expect you to have, here are the components, here's why you're going to need them. So it was a webcam to record video and to participate using Adobe Connect, having a working microphone with it. It could be a webcam, it could be laptop based. If people wanted a headset mic instead for the synchronous component, they could have that, even though everybody thinks they look funny with the little headphones and the microphone. And just kind of having a list and saying, here's what we recommend. Saying, I love Logitech. I love Logitech. I think they make great products. So that was one thing. And I said, we took a look at these. We got to play a lot and find out what worked the best. And saying, this is somewhat inexpensive because we didn't want the students to spend a lot of money, extra money for these courses that we figure a lot of students are going to be poor enough when they get out of school they don't need all that.
I found if you recommend the gaming headsets, most of the males will have them.
Right there.
Yeah, just to take another step on the argument about requirements, how do you handle support issues? And with that, I mean from both sides. In other words, support issues from students calling up and saying, my camera doesn't work, my microphone doesn't work, and from faculty saying things like, how do you upload this document?
Every synchronous class we had, I sat in on virtually and said, all right, I recommend everybody gets in here 15 minutes prior to make sure that your webcam works, mic works, test your video, test your sound. If that's not working, we can sit and troubleshoot. We had some people kind of go in and out because of internet connections, and then they would, in the middle of class, they'd be emailing me doing that. So we had and when I couldn't do it, Don did it. And so we had a dedicated person in the course when it was going synchronous. For Don's synchronous course, he was the dedicated support person and the instructor, which having you have a bigger class, it would have been probably slightly overwhelming.
Yeah, the point that I want to make is that, say if you're considering teaching online, and if you are the person who's going to teach it, like Tom, you basically don't worry about support or the tools because he knows about it. But if you are thinking about pitching this online distance education to your faculties, my advice from my own experience is stick with what is known. For instance, whatever course management you have, students already have experience with them, and the support is already there. So stick with whatever you already know and start from the minimum bare minimum, and experiment with it. When I teach my online class, real-time class, I have to step by step because I have to introduce them to different techniques each time because I don't want to overwhelm them with the things they do. For instance, the course management, I actually built a site using WordPress. But then at a certain point, I noticed that students have already self-registered in the Blackboard. You know, I was thinking about using a different course management. But I noticed the students already know how to register into Blackboard. So why do I need to use another system that I use? So if you are not the person who is going to teach it, stick with the known platform you already use it. I'm sure in your institution you already have faculty members who probably teach some kind of like that. We have faculty members teaching distance education at William Mitchell for at least 5 or 6 years, right? And we have a professor who's teaching it from Israel, all the way. I mean, never being on the campus. So we already have professors know how to do that online, using the platform you already use it. And from my perspective, the technology is already there. I mean, the course management system is the perfect thing for you to do if you want to do asynchronous ones. And if you are not the one who's teaching it, if you want to pitch it to faculties, they already know it. Most of them know how to do it.
I might add that what we find, what we have chosen as the best method for support is preparation. We require our students take an orientation to distance education courses, and in that orientation we cover those types of things. And we do the same thing with faculty. Faculty who are teaching distance education have to do a one-time course as an orientation to distance education. We provide more support to the faculty. Occasionally we'll get an email, and that's usually the best way to get us. We'll get an email while they're in the middle of an Illuminate session saying somebody's having a problem or somebody can't get in. And usually we can fix that pretty quickly. But we've found that we've had this semester, we have 5 courses, and we've had very few support issues. And I think it's because we required that the students do the orientation to distance education.
Susie, got a follow-up question for that. You know, if you don't have people sort of embedded in the class and you have this preparation, what, and you're available by email or someone's available, do you have someone sort of on call during the hours when all these classes are being taught? You know, if they're teaching a 6 to 8 class, is there someone that's going to be available by email from 6 to 8 or something at night?
We do not.
Okay.
We have our standard IT help desk, which is open till maybe 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, till quarter to midnight. But majority of the problems that we've seen are not IT concerns, they're user concerns. Now, we have had to send students directly to Illuminate support because whatever the problem was related to their computer. And we couldn't resolve that problem. They had to have someone else do that. But we don't have, and while I am available by email a lot of times, I don't want to live my life that way. I don't want to be tied to the computer all the time. So I often don't even know when they're doing their classes. It seems to go pretty smoothly, and we don't have to do that.
Okay. Question down front.
Yeah, I have actually a 2-part question, I guess. One is, have you noticed any or collected any data that shows satisfaction or dissatisfaction by the students of, you know, how these are actually working and playing out? And related to that is, I guess Lindsay mentioned this, if it's asynchronous, why does it matter how many people are taking a course? So like a skills course, like an advanced legal research course, if there's 20 or 25 now, and you're suggesting it shouldn't be more than 12 or 15. So if we can maybe address those two together.
We did a survey after the trial advocacy program of the students and faculty, and we had a really high satisfaction level. I don't know if it was just because they were trying to make us feel really good or what and trying to get this to go through, but we just got rave reviews about it, and so that was really nice. It depends on how much the faculty want to do of the class load they think they can handle. Research suggests that online courses should not be very big. And I mean, if it's a do-it-yourself course and there's not a lot of grading or something, then it's a lot. You can probably raise the number to a lot more students. But if you're having discussion board and discussing questions, if you're having a lot of interactivity, you don't want to overload the faculty. And Because they're going to be, if they want to do personal responses to each student, 12 is a really manageable number because it means, they can do, an hour a week for each student or a half hour a week, and then they're spending 6 hours paying attention to their course and when they should be teaching, and it's a nice number. It's, let's go for it.
Before you go into the other part of this question, I just say that having taught completely asynchronous courses, that the prep work involved in getting those lectures online is very time consuming each week, more time consuming than preparing a lecture and going into a classroom and teaching it. Just because of the technical issues involved in, whether you're just recording audio or you're doing screencasts or whatever, you're going to stumble and have to start over or do an edit at some point to clean it up, and that can take a long time to work. I mean, when I was teaching, generally speaking, I was doing all of my lecture work on Mondays. I would go in about 7 a.m. and I would routinely go home at 11 p.m. because I was doing it all in one day. But also with asynchronous, because of the lack of interaction, of direct live interaction, you tend to need to ramp up how much of the the asynchronous interaction you have, be it longer assignments or more discussion questions. And as a result of that, the more students you have, the more work you're adding on top, be it just reading and making sure to give credit to everybody who participated in the discussion, or those longer assignments that can be pretty tedious. And with advanced legal research, anybody who's taught that class, grading those assignments can be really tedious. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't get any easier on the 15th assignment than it was on the first. It's still tedious because, who knows what they answered may be completely different, but it may be right. And so you start adding in, 20, 30 students, that's really time consuming. So
We have different course limits based on how the course is taught. And then we have some, and we don't have 12, unfortunately. We have, the lowest one of our limits is 25 students. But we have some courses that we exempt from limits, and one of those is an asynchronous bar prep course. It's there are 100 students in that class. And interesting enough, that is the course, it's a 1-credit course, and it's the course that has, this past semester, had the most activity in it. But when I'm teaching a writing course and there are 35 students in that class, it is killing me. There's so much work that that's too many students in a course that has a lot of assignments, because the student interaction is directly related to faculty interaction in the discussion board. So I will make sure that they're having robust discussions in the discussion board, but I also have to give them timely feedback on the assignments that they submit to me, and it's pretty difficult when you have a large number of students.
Did you have a question down in front?
Well, I wanted to give a slightly different perspective, which is I'm in my second semester teaching business towards online asynchronously, and I think 12 is too small for a course like that, because the problem that I've encountered is getting enough students to participate regularly, and therefore in sort of the 24 to 30 range is enough to generate the discussion, because you really can't expect them to be online half an hour to an hour every day in a 3-credit course.
Right, and the way that I dealt with that was something that I personally hate, but had no other way around it, which is I hate attendance policies, I hate participation points. I'm a assignments are everything kind of guy, but in order to generate enough discussion out of my 15 students, I had to make it part of their grade.
Well, I do that too, and we use eCollege, which allows me to track how many minutes they're online every day for each part of the assignment. And I'll send them an email saying, you haven't been online Monday to Wednesday, what's the start?
It all depends on what's important to you when you're teaching. And so I like discussion boards. They can get a little tedious if people aren't giving quality discussion. So one course that we helped set up this summer, she's like, well, I want to not have class on some days because I have to be out of town, so I want to do discussion boards. And I said, okay, I have 3 questions. Require them to post a comment in each, or post something in each question that's X amount of words-ish. So then they have to limit themselves to be pretty terse as well, because otherwise they could go on for pages and pages if they really felt like it. And then they had to respond, a quality response to at least 2 other students. And there's probably about 20 or so in this class. And so that they can continue the discussion more, and the discussion boards never close. And so students are still discussing from week 2 now that the semester's almost over, just because they wanted to continue the quality discussion. It's a family law course, so they're doing all kinds of really exciting topics, so.
Question right there.
As a law teacher, could you, my interest is, and I'm really excited about the possibilities of synchronous teaching and the idea of a kind of telepresence classroom, and the possibilities of the sort of animated Socratic exchange in real time with, say, a panel, and you've got the names of the students and they're at different places, but everybody, in a sense, is aggregated, and there is this back and forth law teachers' excitement. That's what gets me excited. And I just wondered what you saw as the future for the kind of real-time telepresence possibility.
The one I thought was real time. What I see the difference is that if 6 students is wonderful, you know, you can put on a screen, you see it. If you have too many people, like first year tours or contracts, this whole room.
Can you give a number of what you think the limit would be?
Well, it depends on what the technology can do, and it depends on, there are rules to an online classroom that you don't have in a classroom like this, because not everybody can be talking at once. If everybody has their mic on, you get a lot of feedback, it takes up bandwidth, and it basically turns into a big mess. So you have to have rules of, I'm going to push to talk, and I'm going to talk, and then I'm done, and Don would push to talk, and so there's rules and politeness, and you don't have as many people interrupting each other and everything. But it's really whoever the facilitator or instructor, it's what you can handle, and what the technology can handle. So there's that really...
Analogies to business video conferencing and what companies are doing to avoid business travel could transfer to the law school?
We did, our very first distance course was a course that we did with video, through the video technology. And we did it between us and another school. We had a professor at each school. I want to say that we had maybe 25, I don't remember how many students it was, but 25 to 30 students at Florida Coastal. There were fewer than 10 at the other school, but students were in both places too. It was not the greatest experience in the world. It wasn't a great experience for the students, in that that type of technology between schools is not always as, doesn't go always as smoothly as we would like it. In a course where you're using something like Illuminate Live or Wimba, which is a virtual classroom, we've had as many as 70 or 80 students in the course at the time. A lot of professors use that for their review sessions. So we do have, like, the very first professor who used that for us was a property professor, and she had at least 70 students at her review sessions. What the professors say is that when they do a session like that, thinking from the student perspective, when a professor throws a question out, yes, the students can raise their hand and they can speak, and we limit the mic to only one mic at a time, but there's a chat board in there. And the students, when a professor asks a question, the student's perception is, he's asking that question of me, not just the smartest student in the class. And they're all answering simultaneously. And we see 100% participation in those classes because of that interaction. But that is, while there is video technology, we use the system because the professor can show a video, or can do a web tour, or can have PowerPoints, or can just have a discussion. It's so they can kind of build the class based on the need for the teaching and learning for any particular day.
Students love the chat feature.
Yeah,
they love the chat feature because it's not their voice, and it's not like they're raising their hand. They can just kind of answer the question and go. And so, though we tried to have voice conversations, the students were way more apt to type in answers via chat instead.
That's a good segue into something we've talked about, some of who these students are, as far as, you know, they're doing internships or they're out, you know, out of town. But, you know, the response of the students, you know, what, you know, have students liked doing the online classes, and what are some stuff that they really liked about them, and what are some of the stuff they didn't like about them?
in my class, I tell you, one of the benefits of teaching real-time online is that, maybe it's the same as the asynchronous, that your relationship with the students keeps going online. It's very interesting. Like I had students who had clerk in Washington, D.C., and they just keep writing me, oh, how do I do this? How do I find out the history of this regulation? They get accustomed to writing you because it's an online class, so they keep back and forth, so they get accustomed to it. They don't think it's extra. They would just ask you questions. So the relation continues. Now back to Mark's question. I did a survey before the class started. Well, my class might not be a typical one because a student self-selected. They knew it's online, they knew it's real, so when they registered for the classes, they don't know what they're getting into. They're very interested in. By the end of the class, everybody, 6 of them, everybody say, it should be 2 credits, and I would recommend it to everybody.
Tell you what our students say, and it depends on the students, where the students are. If it's a JD course where the students are in the class, they have to be at the school anyway, they don't all like using a synchronous format because the purpose of a distance course for some students is that they can be wherever they want to be to do the course. But if they have to be at school for a noon class or a 1 o'clock class, and they have to be online for an 11 o'clock class, guess where they are doing that online course? They're in a classroom somewhere, or they're in a cubbyhole. Every spot of our school is a learning space, so they're somewhere there. But the students, I have a quote here that came from a student who was somewhere else, and this is what the student said. The online courses are really important to me because they really help with time management. And this is true. Students have to really manage their time well. I have a 15-month-old baby boy at home and a husband who needs almost the same amount of attention. Online courses save time, gas money, and force me to be organized and focused. I know that I have to be that much more focused and determined to get my homework done on time. Our students love it. We see students taking more and more. Our online classes normally have a waiting list because we do have some limits in there, and it gives them the ability to be somewhere else and to still take courses.
And the first year that I taught online, my most engaged student, I heard from him more by email than anyone else, and he posted to the discussion forums more than anyone else, was a soldier stationed in Afghanistan who had been his reserve unit had been activated. He had to drop out, put his education on hold, but because of the online class, he was able to take 1 class while he was actually on active duty.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. I know there was a lot of questions out there. Unless any of us have to run somewhere really quickly, maybe we can hang out for another 5 or so minutes if you want to come up here so we won't take up everyone else's time that you need to go somewhere else. So, thank you. Oh, you took a picture? Oh, so posted it.
Oh, that's in the afternoon.
That was Tom. That was you. You must have taken the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did a panorama across the
Thank you guys so much for doing this. This was good. I have to mind over that where I'm going. I know it's on this corner.
Well, where do you want to go? Yeah, that's where I want to go.
Yeah, it's just
we can
kind
go
of
together.
out here.
But it's break now. Oh, we were even here.
Yeah, there is no break.
Okay, so then I want to go there.
Yeah.
When is the next session?
2:04. 11:30. It's already.
No, we had an hour. They just didn't put any. They didn't have any.
Where's lunch?
Oh, I'm assuming that it was a
Oh, lunch. This is a lunch. We are lunch.
Yeah, this starts with you're right. I'm assuming it's
Let's go. I want to.
yeah. I just ordered one this morning. We ordered the toasters, but my director said raise a hand or try to chat.
Well, thank you so much for you guys.
Nice to see you.
And I did
That was one.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
all right,
Absolutely. This is fun.
Yes, please, absolutely.
Hi, how are you? It's nice to meet
Stuff like that, but all of a sudden I get these frantic emails from like, just told me how much
I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, okay, now I can actually what's the schedule?
well, all I know is I'm going to the.
So is that what the lunch, that's the only lunch meeting today, or is there? Yeah, it's listen to us, we're like, which technology, oh, the tech tour, and that's not, they said that was the day. And where is that?
So it's like up and around.
So it's 204 here?
204 is here.
Okay.
If it has an E or a W, it's over by the food. It is lunch.
I know, I like
and I can tell my bag's heavy.
I know, this is the side effect of like cramming the laptop in the
Well, I was just gonna have a purse, and I thought, oh, here's everything.
Same here, I know. I discovered this bag actually holds the MacBook, so it's like, oh, okay.
That was the only place I could find that.
So two things, you don't have to worry.
I don't think so.
And their station said, it's so we're not using like markers, we're not just giving the information, we're not even making that. This is what the sign says. Which had your. And who were they? The three. There's nobody near the station.
That wasn't my point. I just think.
Yeah, that's a big question.
Obviously,
Outdoors, they're barriers, so that you don't get no flexibility.